Konnichiwa minasan, Marina desu. How y'all doing? So today is the sixth episode of Frill Talk, and today I have a lovely guest with me. Aria, how are you doing?
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm doing okay.
That's great to hear. Thank you for joining me, Aria. So today we'll be speaking with Aria about her experiences in J fashion. So I hope you'll all give a listen. So Aria, what style of J fashion do you wear?
Well, primarily I wear gothic, sometimes classic, sometimes when I'm feeling daring, a little bit of sweet, but it still leans like very, very classic. But gothic Lolita is pretty much my mainstay. And I guess also non Lolita styles. I wear like Larm sometimes too. And other like gothic adjacent sort of styles. It's like a mix of everything.
Mm. So then, how long have you been wearing J fashion overall?
Oh man, it's been such a long time. Pretty much I started out in high school, so I was probably I think like 14 or 15. So about 15 years, I guess. And Lolita specifically, probably around 12 or 13 years because I started out when I was like finishing high school. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's awesome! I know a lot of folks that are watching are probably jealous that they didn't start Lily until like their 20s, including me.
Oh. Yeah, I mean like it was rough though in the beginning because like I couldn't really afford anything. So that kind of like led me into like I guess I could talk about this later too, but like kind of making my own stuff because I couldn't afford to buy brand. I couldn't afford to buy stuff from Japan and a lot of it wasn't available. If anything, if you got started later, it's probably better because then you could afford stuff or you have like more access like the later you got into it. So not so bad.
So how were you introduced to J fashion then?
Oh yeah, that's a great story. So it's a couple of things. It's mostly it started with like my interest in anime. I've been into anime since I was like 4 years old because well before I even knew it was anime because I used to watch Sailor Moon when it came on TV when I was a kid and I watched a whole ton of that and so I just kept like it became a gateway to more and more animes over the years as I got older and then I finally figured out, oh yeah, this is a thing. It's called anime. Started reading manga and stuff too. So eventually like one thing leads to another. Like I got into that and then I got into Japanese music and I met friends who were interested in the same things. And it is a couple of different lines. I think around the beginning of high school, so I was also like a goth emo kid sort of situation, whatever you call it, like hot topic trash kid, like when I was really young. So like you just you start searching gothic stuff online, and the next thing you know, Lolita stuff starts popping up, and I'm just like, whoa, like what's that? Like that seems like really interesting. And before I even knew what it was, and then I had a friend in high school. Her name is Audrey. She had like Visual K magazines, and she had like started introducing me to some of that type of stuff. And I'm like, ooh, like what's this like new music style, new like fashion. Like it was just like music and fashion crossing over. And I'm like, okay, I need to like find out more. And then I discovered Mana from Malice Miser and it was rap. Like that was it. And I was like, I need to be that. And the rest is history.
Wow. That's amazing. That's so awesome. So have you ever done like VK then?
A little. It was a little bit. I look back at it. I'm like, yikes! Like I tried my best. Like I remember, I had made. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this, but like they were like pants. They looked like they were like cut off. You cut off the bottom of bell bottoms, and they're like leg warmers And I remember I made myself a pair and I took like really bad lace, like stretch lace, and trimmed it on the bottom. And I would wear those to school. And the good thing about my high school was that it was a fashion high school. So everybody was a weirdo. So you could do whatever you want. I felt like I was super blessed to go to like an alternative, like sort of school because everybody was weird. So you could do that type of stuff and people wouldn't care because everyone's doing something strange. So it was pretty awesome. But when I look back, I'm like, that was a little cringy, but it's part of it. It's part of it.
Oh wow, that's really cool. Like I know for me, like my high school is definitely more like typical like just black high school with, all types of people, but never alternative. And you always had like your weirdos, your anime weirdos. I was part of that crowd.
Yeah.
So that's amazing to hear like alternative high schools are a thing. And I hope they are still a thing. I have no idea. I don't know the current state of high schools now.
Yeah, I
Um
don't know. Even my old high school, I'm not sure like how the climate is there. Like it still exists because the good thing about my high school is that it's a little special and that students would have to all commute there because it was in the middle of the city. It wasn't like when I was in junior high and elementary school and I went to mostly like inner city like regular schools, mostly other like black and brown and kids like of all different shades, and we're just like kind of like there, and it was a little bit more mainstream. And I had a little bit of trouble there because I started my weird kick started when I was around like 11, 12. And there were people who didn't really like accept it as much, but I've always been the type of like, I'm still gonna do what I want. I don't care about y'all. I don't know what y'all are doing, but I'm gonna do this over here. So but going to like a high school that like everybody had to commute to and everything, that was great for me. That was great for me.
Oh wow, that's really great. So, since you do live in New York City, while out in J Fashion, have you had many positive experiences?
A mix of stuff. Like mostly I would say is positive. But I think that is because I mostly wear gothic. And I think people see gothic and they're just like, oh, a goth. I know what that is. Like, and they either they keep their distance and they're like maybe a little bit scared of me, which is really great. Or I remember this one time I wasn't wearing gothic Lolita specifically, but I was wearing like a very like alternative sort of gothic outfit. And I got a couple of people like, oh, it's not Halloween. Or this one woman like called me the devil in Spanish once. And I'm like, I heard you, like, what just happened? Like she just, it was in passing, and she just like, she's like Diablo, and then she just like walked by, and I was like, oh, all right, cool. Like,
Wow, the audacity!
yeah, so I was
Like
like,
it's one thing to yell it like across the street, but just like
yeah, it was like
that's
it was
just
a drive by. I was like, whoa, like I wasn't expecting that. And she was like a nice little old lady, like, and I was like, oh, sorry if I offended you. Like, I'm just existing out here.
wow. That is crazy.
Yeah.
So, since you've been in Lolita and J Fashion in general for a long time, have you noticed anything that's been done in the past in Lolita that isn't like being done like anymore?
Hmm. Thinking like maybe more like style wise, or just
In
like,
general, like it could be anything.
hmm. Well, what I remember I used to love, like, I mean, because when I got into Lolita specifically, like I was influenced by a lot of like older stylings of Lolita, so like what would be considered old school Lolita now.
Mhm.
um so things like I kind of came into like my peak time was like around 2010, 2012, where things started to kind of like shift. So I was like, kind of in between, but a lot of the influences I had came from previously because I was seeing a lot of older images because it was just stuff that was just already existed. um and I always have had like a thing for like older stylings, like, people wear their natural hair, even though I love wigs. Like I'm not gonna play, like my hair is like super short. So nowadays I just like cut off all of my natural hair because it just was a little bit much for me to deal with. So I still embrace wigs, but it was cool, like kind of like doing the more like natural hairstyles. I remember when I was a baby Lolita, like my mom would literally straighten my hair and try to do like the pin curls with my real hair, and that's
Oh,
like, no, it's not worth it. It's not worth the hair damage. It's not worth the trouble. Like wigs are much better because I'm just not gonna do that to my hair anymore. Um, but yeah, like it was still a cool like time, and things were a lot simpler. I feel like things were a little bit more experimental in the beginning, and I just want to see like more of that, like in like currently, like kind of like going back to putting like different types of aesthetics together and like just mixing it up and making it cool and interesting. Like I just like more experimental coordination and not so like rigid like rules based coordination. I mean, like I get like, okay, the rules kind of like follow them at first, but then once you kind of get in your groove, like, you know, step out and have fun. That's kind of like my thing right now, because that's, I feel like that's very much how it was in the beginning, when people were just in the street doing their thing and wearing whatever, and they just kind of like did it. And now I don't really like the formulaicness of some like outfits. Sometimes like it can get a little bit boring, so I don't know. But I think also as like a gothic Lolita, I feel like there's a lot more level of experimentation, because you could just mix like so many different type of dark elements and you kind of have something cool. But I don't know, it's a mix of things. Like I understand like some people just really like the simple, like just buy the book outfits and that's what they feel comfortable in. That's cool. But I like the step out of the box, like wild like stuff more.
right. I feel that. So how about reverse then? What's something that you've seen being done more now versus like in the beginning?
Hmm.
Again, can be general.
Yeah. What would that be? I definitely um I do like, there's like a lot more materials, I guess, because I feel like in like old school stylings has, there was a lot of, you know, mostly cotton and cotton lace, and like it was almost like the same types of fabrics all the time, even though I love those fabrics, like they're some of my favorites even today. But I like that, you know, we have like, for instance, like Atelier Pierrot is like one of my favorite brands right now. And they have like, you know, like chiffons and like shantung and like these fabrics that are like really like, you know, just more like textured variant type of stuff. And not to say they didn't have that like in the beginning, they definitely did. But I kind of like some of the more out there things that I'm seeing now, like from Atelier Pierrot. Mr. Corset is another really great brand that I really like, because they have a lot of, you know, this corsetry and it's like historical inspired. Like it's more, it just takes, it just goes harder on some of those like historical elements, and like it just is a lot more interesting in that sense. So I kind of like, you know, mixing the two things, because I really like that aesthetic, and I also really like the old school, like more simplistic and cottons and cotton laces aesthetic too. So I like both. So, and that didn't really come about until like, you know, more recently, and I like both. I like both. Yeah. So.
That's nice. So would you say that there is a period of J fashion in your opinion that was like the peak
Hmm.
or a peak if there's more than one?
Definitely, I feel like 2012. I feel like 2012 is when I hit my personal, like, well, maybe 2012, 2014 is probably like when I hit my like peak time, because at that point I had gotten a job and I was able to like, you know, buy brand items because I had graduated from college in 2013. And I was like, okay, cool. I finally have like, you know, income to say I'm like buying things. And 2014 is also the time when I went to Japan for the first time. So I was able to like shop in like the stores in Harajuku and Shinjuku and Shibuya and everything. And that was just like the greatest experience ever. So even though I literally maxed the credit card out, that was very irresponsible. Don't do that. But I just got like really excited about like just everything at that point, because it was just like you can get a little bit of that old school stuff if you wanted. You can get the newer, more current, modern at the time styled items if you wanted. I was all up in Closet Child, just like digging, getting, and I got a lot of like some of my like favorite items, even though some of them I've sold up to now. Like my style has changed a lot since then, but yeah, around like 2012 to 2014, 2015 is probably like the peak season, well, my personal peak season. But I feel like another one is on its way, because like I'm almost 30 now. So I'm just like thinking about like what is my future as a Lolita? And I'm like, I feel like I'm only just beginning again, because my style has changed a lot. Like I'm less into prints and um matchy like stuff. I just kind of want everything to be black textures and just like different, like EGA. I'm even thinking about getting into like OG style at some point. Like I just feel like the sky's the limit, like aristocrat, like everything. Like I just want to like do everything.
Yeah,
So
I feel like not a lot of people are like doing aristocrat or like OG in general. So
yeah,
do you ever feel like those two styles would ever like see its peak?
I wonder, I hope so. Like, because I feel like a lot of the people that I like came up with in the fashion are also getting older. And I see like, and not to say that you couldn't wear pink, sweet pastel clothes when you get older, like you do whatever you want. Because for me, I'm like, I be Lolita grandma, I don't care. Um, but like I hope that like some of those more offshoot styles that people don't see commonly worn, like definitely get more of a like more of their chance in the sun, I guess, because they're just great. Like, and I feel like definitely with EGA, a lot it speaks to a lot more mature sentiments, I guess. Like I can totally see myself being like scary grandma in the scary house who wears like all EGA clothes. And like I have like my little group. This is so weird. I always tell this story to people. I have like my little group of neighborhood kids who hang out at my house, like the other like weird goth kids will hang out at my house, and I'll like bake them stuff or like make them food, and we'll just like listen to like I'll introduce them to Malice Miser and like Maudie Small, and I'm like, this is the music of my youth, like enjoy. And I just like it sounds like really creepy and weird, but in my mind it's the way I can totally see myself being like when I get older.
That's so funny. I mean, those kids would just get cultured, that's all.
Yes, yes, they will. I will make sure they're shepherded towards what they need. They need to know the roots. They need to know like, yeah, I'll be that. I'll be that person.
So since we're seeing like a lot of brands like pump out new prints and new releases, do you feel like would there be a time that Lolita or J Fashion overall will become more normalized?
You know, I don't know. I don't think so. In normalized in the sense, 'cause I feel like there's just something about J Fashion that is too far for most like people in society. Like it's just I don't see people like being like never like seeing this as this like normal, because like even with goths, like just general Western goth, people still don't see that as fully normal. Like so if that, and sometimes even in like the most toned down sense, like people are still like they see it as something other. So I feel like J fashion, Lolita fashion, like it just takes that to the next level that I don't ever see it becoming any sort of mainstream. And that's just my opinion, I guess. But I don't know, it would take a lot. Maybe if people just kind of like see it and they know what it is and they kind of like go about their lives and they don't like, because anything for people not to harass people in fashion and just like say, oh, those people, that's that weird like J fashion stuff. Like if people just said that and like went on with their day, that'd be cool. But I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. But um I think it also depends on where you live, because I feel like um in the like especially like in big cities like in New York and stuff, like there's a lot more acceptance for like strangeness, because it's just so much like strange things that occur on a daily basis that is just like, well, there's more weirdos, cool, and I just lean into it. um but in probably like in more rural places, or places it's like where there's less alternative folks, I can't see it just being like, oh yeah, this is totally fine, because people are terrible sometimes.
No, yeah, I agree. It would be nice to see more, well, maybe not as like as you said, like, oh, okay, it's that weird J fashion stuff, and then move out the day. But since we're like seeing like celebrities like trying out J fashion, I wonder what the future of that will be if more celebrities will continue to do that. So
Mhm.
since you've sort of touched on it, so when you think of Lolita, a lot of people don't realize it's a counterculture. So what are your thoughts of Lolita? And for the audience, maybe also explain what is counterculture and how does it relate to Lolita?
Yeah, that is like such a complex like sort of question, I feel like. But it's interesting to think about, because everyone knows like Lolita fashion kind of gets like a bad rap just because of the name. Like it's always like you say, like it's almost like you can't say that word to people sometimes. Like I find when I'm explaining what I'm wearing to people in the street when they ask, I'm like, oh, this is just like a really like frilly fashion from Japan. Like we just dress up to have fun. Like I really find myself like tiptoeing around the word Lolita, because it's just like so loaded, which really sucks, because I'm like, I know, and everyone that I know knows that it has nothing to do with the book or anything like that. And it's just annoying to have to kind of like rehash that like every 5 seconds. And there's always like a naysayer that pops out of the corner, like, no, I really know what you are up to. I know what you all are up to. And I'm like, do you? You really don't. And that's annoying. And they kind of just don't put it two and two together, or they're thinking like, oh, you're doing this for like the attention of men. And I'm like, absolutely not, because that doesn't even make any sense. Like it's very strange. Like I because I don't know how people can't see it as like a counterculture thing, but as somebody who's just been like in fashion for so long, and went to like weird schools where everybody kind of just like dressed weird, and be like weird, for like the word weird for me is like a badge of honor. Like some people like, oh, like they think it's something bad, but I'm just like, no, it's a good thing to me. Like if you said I was weird, I'd be like, oh cool, that means I'm doing everything right. um so it's I don't know, like I wish it was just kind of seen as more for what it actually is, opposed to what people claim they know what's really going on. Because that's really the most irritating thing anybody can say. Like when they think they have it all figured out, and I'm like, no, you're just making a bunch of assumptions based on your biases, and you don't really know what's up. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So then, so what are, just for those that might not know, when talking about Lolita in general or specifically, um, could you just briefly touch on some of its political and counterculture origins? Sort of
Sure.
mentioned it already.
Yeah, like because it's like, it's a rebellion against normalcy, a rebellion against just conformity, and just just doing what society tells you to do. Like, oh, we're all here, you have to like get a job, and you have to wear like these business casual clothes, and just be basic and blend in with everybody around you. And I've been anti that since probably I came out the womb, if that's even possible. Like I just have never wanted to conform to anything. Like the minute like somebody says like, oh, why don't you like listen to the same music everyone else listens to? Like what? I'm like, no, I don't want to do that, because I'm gonna do this. Like it's always, I've always been that, like since a very, very young age. So the idea of like just trying to fit into what everybody else is doing to like not shake things up and not take up space, and it's just so many things, especially as a woman, as a Black woman. It's just all those layers of just being like, oh, you're just supposed to like not exist, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna exist very up, like loudly, because I can and I have the right to. So a lot of it goes into that. I know it's different for everybody, and you know, there's so many layers of like marginalization that people deal with. So it can't help but be like political, because I feel like you're making a statement by just going against the grain of society, and you take any of the marginalization you might have, like if you're disabled, if you're trans, or just so many different things that you can be and exist as, and just, and then you have some, like you can kind of see fashion as like an armor in a way, because I see it like that sometimes, like it kind of like brings you into your true form, I guess, like how you would exist if you ideally could exist in a certain, like in the way you want it all the time. Even though on the flip side of that, like there's a lot, I feel like sometimes fashion can be fatiguing in a lot of ways, um where some people can't really say they're dressing up all the time, if maybe if they have chronic illness and it may be exhausting to do so, or if you're just not like having a good like mental health day, and sometimes when you have to put in all this effort, you just don't have it in you to do. Because I know I definitely felt like that, where I'm just like, I don't really feel my best, and sometimes it can help you to dress up, and sometimes it can exhaust you to dress up. So it's very like layered and complex, but um I think overall it's definitely positive for a lot of us.
Right. No, I agree. I know sometimes like even though, I would say that I wear Lolita pretty frequently. Probably in the past like year I haven't that much. I mean, given we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so that probably
Mhm.
affects a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we're at least Lolita and like pretty much any J fashion style, we're very social creatures. We want to
Yeah.
be with others of our kind and talk about our chords and fan over each other's chords. So it's definitely much a does take a toll on people.
Yeah.
So for newer folks, they're, at least from what I'm seeing, sometimes they don't seem to understand that this fashion Lolita can be politically charged. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of see both sides, in the sense that I know some people like use fashion as an escape from a lot of like crappy things in our world, but at the end of the day, like some people can't help, like just their existence is a political act. So to diminish that is a little bit disrespectful in my opinion, because you know it's a lot of privilege that you have if you could just be like, oh, I'm just going to wear J fashion and ignore like everything else, because I can do that. And there's some people in our community who cannot do that. Like them existing in the way that they want to exist is a political statement. And there's always been like this undercurrent of like racism and like ableism and so many isms, when people who may not fit the typical, whatever typical like idea of what a Lolita or a J fashion person should look like, which is usually like lighter skinned or thin or like able bodied, like all of those things, and cisgendered, like usually most of the time as well. So all those things, and if you don't fit that, automatically you're just considered an other. And if you fit the mold of what's expected, like what you see in the magazines, because I feel like unfortunately a lot of the representation in like J fashion magazines from the past, or even still maybe in the present, or like some of the spreads you see from like some of the newer publications, or like the newer like Instagrammy sort of thing, like you still can tell that there is an ideal that exists, and there are people who are being excluded and not represented. And um, everyone who's not, we're always like banging on the door, like, hey, like, we're here too. And even for me, like, I definitely feel like I hold a lot of privilege too, as someone who's lighter skinned, thin, able bodied, cisgendered, like all of those things combined. Like, I know, like, people would find, like, if they see me in an outfit, they'll see it as more palatable because it's closer to that ideal, even if it's not 100% like there, but it's like the closeness that I have, the proximity I have to that does give me privilege too. And you have to recognize that. Like, some people just don't recognize it. Like, oh no, I'm just doing this fun thing. Like, it's not a political statement. It's not this, not that. I'm like, no, it is. Like, I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's how it is how it is. Like, if you just deny it completely, then that's just privilege, like, straight up.
Right. I agree with everything. Okay, so we're back from our break with Aria. So that was a great conversation that we are having so far. I feel like I just learned a lot, and I hope a lot of, especially like newer Lolitas, like understand like the nuances of this fashion, and I hope that they take the time to research about the origins of Lolita, because maybe that's a part of the reason why a lot of newer Lolitas seem to be much more rigid on rules or not understanding some of the nuances. So, as a Black person in J Fashion, Aria, what is something you think specifically for Lolita that affects Black Lolitas differently than non-Black Lolitas when wearing Lolita?
Yeah, that is a very layered issue. Um,
Loaded question.
Very much. And it needs to be asked because it goes a lot deeper than I think most people might recognize. Because again, like, there's a marginalization that comes with being a Black person. And then there's always that layered marginalization that comes from being a Black person of a certain complexion and certain abilities and certain, just like your sexuality and all of these things and your gender identity. And when you just like exist as somebody who is Black in this sort of space, like, one or two things happens. Like, I feel like there is a tokenization that might happen sometimes. Like, if you're the only one in your community, for me personally, that never been an issue because I'm from New York, and majority of the community are people of color as a whole. Not everybody is Black, but like, just everyone's like some type of like person of color, more or less. Like, it's almost like a majority person of color in my local community. um but it's like, specifically as a Black person, I feel like there's like this stigma that has existed ever since I got into the fashion, where it's like Black people are not supposed to wear Lolita fashion because it's like Black people aren't elegant. Like, there's this like a stereotype of, you know, Black people being seen as like a certain way, especially Black women specifically, or like just feminine presenting Black people in some form. And there's like this thought that you have to be like hypersexualized, and like you're like, and I hate using these type of words. They have like these connotations like ghetto and ratchet and like things like that. Like you have to embody this sort of stereotype. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with, like, you being you in your Blackness, but it's when other people who are not Black, like, if another Black person is like, oh, like, we all both look ratchet, whatever, like, cool, it's fine. But like, when other people are saying it like it's a negative thing, is where so you're basically telling me like I need to embody this thing that you don't even understand as a non-Black person. Because like for instance, like, if a Black person has like colored hair, on a Black person, that's considered like ghetto. and that's a bad thing somehow. But then on a white person, or maybe on somebody else who's not particularly black, but that also gets murky, because I feel like other people of color also kind of like have to balance this too. But it's not really seen, it's seen more like quirky and whimsical on someone who's like not black. And I'm like, but why? We're both doing the same things. And even when it comes to, and it's a little bit kind of like an aside, but it's definitely relatable. Like if white people listen to rap music and they want to be all in the culture and everything, and it seemed like it's more like something that people could try on and then like take off, but black people can't take their skin off, their skin color off. Like, I'm still black, like no matter what I'm doing, what I'm wearing. Um, so just that layer, that level of just like, it's just not gonna go away. And I've seen it, and it gets worse if you're black and you're darker complexioned, if you're not thin, and people feel some type of way about you wearing clothes that are quote unquote meant for thinner bodies, whatever that even means. And it just keeps adding the layers to it. And there are people who just like, they can't switch their bodies. You can't change the body you were born into. um shouldn't have to feel like that. Like, why is there like this negativity that just exists, because of just the body you're in and the skin color that you have and how you present to the world. um and it's not, it's really like, I don't like to say like it's unfair, but it's just like not right. Like it's unequitable. It just creates like this tension within the community that doesn't exist. There's like, because I feel like there's like this ideal, again, like this ideal um that people want to uphold, especially like non-black people in J fashion and Lolita fashion. um and then you can see it in other ways, and this is a little bit more insidious, but you can see it in the amount of likes that certain people get on like social media. Like, because I don't know if it's just me, but I pick up on it. I'm like, it seems like there's certain people who get like more attention because they fit that like ideal look more so than others. And I've been seeing a shift in it. I've been seeing like people trying to uplift people who may not fit into like that light skin or white or light skinned, thin, cisgender appearance in this fashion. And that's been great. And I've just been like, anytime that I can uplift people who are more marginalized than me, even though I'm a marginalized person, I jump to that, because I'm like, hey, like, more, like, we just need to see more variety and genuine, and not because people like take pity on you and they're like, oh, like, I'm just gonna like put this person, because there's another, oh god, there's another layer of that where people are just like, let me just like put these people forward so I look better, like I look good because I like showed that I care about these people. I'm like, do you? Because if you're doing it for yourself, so you look like, for your personal PR, that ain't it. So,
Yeah.
ooh, that's a
No,
lot of layers
yeah,
to that.
I totally get it. It's like this kind of relates, but it's like when a lot of non-blacks were posting those black squares on Instagram, and
Mm-hmm.
and kind of just drowning out like actual information regarding the Black Lives Matter movement. So yeah, and then the next few posts those people would do are just their regular stuff, and oh, I did my BLM post for the day. I don't need to care about black people anymore. Let's move on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's like super frustrating to me, because I can tell when it's genuine, like, because you can see it's continuous. And like, the people I know who are not black, and they've been like so uplifting, and you can see like they're real allies, like they're like continuously supporting, they're continuously posting people's content, they're continuously like bringing attention to issues, and taking the foreground, like moving to the background, and letting like other like black people or marginalized people in general like take the forefront. And it's clear when it's clear, and it's very obvious when it's not. So like, yeah, that it's just frustrating because it kind of gets to me sometimes, because I always kind of worry like who can you really trust sometimes when there's a lot of performative activism, a lot of performative actions happening on social media, especially when you're not like with people in person. And when you see people in person, like you could kind of tell their true colors like real quick, because it's hard for people to hide that. For me, I feel like I'm good at reading people, so then when I see them acting out of pocket and doing contradictory things in real life, I'm like,
Mhm.
mm-mm, you ain't gonna fool me. Like,
Oh
yeah.
man. So then I have a sentence for you to fill in the blank. I will give you the prompt. And then you can just tell me either it could be your first thought or your second thought or whatever, but I'll give you a minute to think. Shit that white Lolita say.
I guess it how it relates to other black leaders. Or oh, I know, like definitely there have been instances where it's like, oh, like you actually look like pretty or like nice and like sweet leader or something like that. Like if you're black, and they're just like, oh, you actually look like this like, well, actually you look sort of like good, and like you're an exception in some way. And thankfully nobody that I know personally has said that to me ever, because they would not be my friend.
Yeah, it's almost like
But
a underhanded compliment, like, wow, that
yeah,
actually looks good on you for your skin complexion, kind of
yeah,
feels.
yeah,
It's like if you just said like, "Oh, you look cute." That's it. That's
that's
it.
it.
That's
Like,
it.
why did you have to bring it like, oh, well, actually, like it's like that, just like that thing, like, oh, like you're pretty for a black girl sort of thing. And I'm like, what? Like, what is happening? Like, that's not,
Yeah.
it's not okay. Like, that's really not okay. And then usually what people mean by that is like, oh, your proximity to whiteness makes you more palatable to my sentiments. Like, that's like code speak for that. And I'm like, oh, there's so many layers to why that's not okay.
Have you had any experiences while at meetups where you felt uncomfortable, either like around, it could be from white Lolitas or non-black Lolitas in general?
you know, not really. And I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones. And I also wonder if in the past, when I was younger, that I didn't recognize if there had been something that I should have been like, whoa, like, what was that? Like, I probably just didn't pick up on it. But I definitely feel like now I'm a little bit more like cautious, and I'm like watching. I'm like, I got to make sure that I can actually trust you, because this is not, the history has shown that there is some nonsense, and got to be aware of it. But personally, no, but I have spoken with friends who have had like things happen to them, um that made them uncomfortable, um or maybe just not feel as accepted, I guess. And but I feel like there's all these other extraneous things that have to do with that, because I think sometimes like you don't know if it's because of the way you're dressed. Like maybe if you don't have the most flashy outfit, or like your outfit is really like toned down because say you can't afford like certain things. I know I've definitely been there. Like I'm like, oh, I just kind of like did what I can with what I had, and then people can be like judgmental about that. But then there's like this extra layer of like because you're a person of color, because you're black, like you may not have like access to certain things in a sense. And just just because of like how what usually happens, not just because this of course is like Black people who have money and they can do whatever, but there's an overwhelming majority that don't. So it's just kind of like, are people judging you because of your skin or how you're coming off in some way, or is it another thing? Like it's sometimes it's hard to tell, because just generally Lolita fashion and J fashion, but specifically Lolita fashion, I'd say there's a lot of superficial things that go into it, or that happen, um and a lot of judgment, and a lot of like, and there's people like judging people for fun, and that being like an actual pastime. And that is just a toxic thing, because it's like, it's one thing, like I'm not saying like I haven't seen people wear outfits that I didn't like. I'm like, yeah, sure, but I'm not gonna tell them like, I don't like your outfit, like get out of the fashion because you don't belong, for whatever reason. And there are definitely people who straight up would say like, oh, Lolita is not for Black people, like, and say that online, and like straight up. And I'm like, whoa, what? Like, and that's never happened to me directly, but it's happened to people that I know. And I'm like, that's just wild. And I feel like it's even worse, like the darker your skin is. Like it's definitely a colorism thing. Or like it's anything that is like, the further you are from the ideal, it's people just literally tell you like, this fashion is not for you, like how dare you, like almost like if you're like in, like you're, what is, like sullying the fashion because you're putting your body in it, like there was something, I forget where this it kind of relates to like this idea of like Lolita fashion being like community clothing sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like how dare you put your body into that, like you're ruining it in some way. And I'm like, it's clothes, it's fabric. It's not, it's not like a holy relic. I'm so confused. Like what is happening? Um and I've seen that, like people just feeling like people like almost like they're defiling the fashion by putting their body into it. And that is like, that's just real terrible. Like
Yeah.
really bad. And I do not just subscribe to that type of mentality, and that makes me really upset when I hear stuff like that.
Yeah, you see that a lot when like people even just talk about like altering, like, like just dresses, especially if
Yeah.
it's like angelic pretty or like baby, like Japanese brand dresses. Like that's definitely like something that you see a lot, or at least I do.
Yeah, I see it, and it really bothers me because, you know, and we didn't get into this yet, but like as a brand owner, I I just, because for me, I'm like, clothes are clothes. Like I know like how they're constructed and made and all that stuff. And I'm like, it's not a big deal. Like it's just fabric. Like relax. It's not like untouchable. And just the fact that there isn't a lot of like size inclusivity, and the fact that I feel like black people specifically, like just generally are gonna be not of the tiny Japanese size, like Western size as a whole. But I feel like particularly in the Black community, like there's just so much more of a range of body types and sizes, and a lot of people just don't fit into that like norm. I mean, it's not even normal, because what is normal?
Mm.
But like it's just frustrating. And then to tell people like, oh, you can't alter that, like because you're ruining it. I'm like, actually, I think if you alter something to make it fit you, you just made it so it fit a whole ton more people. So a good alteration can bring more value to a garment than it had before, because before it only fit like this very very small amount of the population, and now it fits a whole range of people because you expanded the size, you added more sharing, you added a panel to it. Like so many amazing alteration work I've seen, I'm just like, yes, like because it brings value to the clothes.
Yeah, but then people think it just lowers the value of a dress. But it's like, I don't know about that now.
And you literally just opened it up to like, so several other people who probably can't fit into the majority of things can wear it. So now it's more of a commodity. It's like, this is even rarer. Like this, say, I don't know, angelic pretty dress that had no sharing in it, and only like three people could wear it. Not three people, but like a very like small amount of people could wear it. And now you added sharing, and like and there's even alteration you can do where it can still fit a smaller size if you like put lacing or you put back ties or anything, and it could also expand to fit larger sizes too. So it's like, now how does that diminish the value? I don't know. That's my opinion as a sewer, a person who sews, whatever you want to call it. Like, I see it differently, very very differently.
Yeah, so I mean, since we're already talking about it, Aria here, she is one of the owners of Lilith et Lilith e Adalia. It is a black-owned Lolita brand. So for the audience that might not be familiar with your brand, we just briefly tell them a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I do the brand with my best friend from high school, Jennifer. We kind of like, after we graduated from college, we're both in fashion school. We both went to the same high school, and then went to FIT for college, and very fashion life. And she's always been like sort of like Lolita adjacent. I call her like Lolita just because she doesn't wear Lolita. Like contrary to popular belief, she is not a Lolita. But she's always admired it, like next to me, and she knows everything there is to know. But she just doesn't wear it herself, which I think is very fascinating. I think there's a lot of people like that. But like, we started the brand because, like, in the beginning, I didn't have a lot of money, and so I made a lot of my own clothes. um just kept like building on those skills, and then skills I learned in school, and combining everything I was learning into being like, hey, let's start a brand. And it started out primarily, well, it started out solely as a children's wear brand.
Oh
And we
wow.
were only gonna make frilly children's dresses. And then everybody and their grandma on Tumblr, when Tumblr was still hip and happening, um, was like, "Are you gonna make these in adult sizes? Are you gonna make adults? Are you gonna do that? Hey!" Like, every single DM, every note, comment, thread, it was like, "Oh, I would love this in adults. I would love this in like my size." And then I'm just like, "Oh dang! Like, am I gonna like?" Are we doing this? Are we gonna make a Lolita brand? And originally is like, it was just like, okay, we weren't really saying we were like a Lolita brand, and we weren't even really saying we were like a gothic brand, but somehow we just ended up becoming that because that's what we were producing. And I guess it just like, my personal biases kind of slipped in. I'm like, well, I wear Lolita and I'm gothic, and Jen is like pretty gothic too, so it's just like, oh, it just kind of happened. And we were making adults clothing. Started in like, I think it was 24. No, no. It was like 26, 15 or 16, where we're like, okay, we're gonna make like adults clothes. Like, we weren't really calling it Lolita fashion, but I was like, but it was. It was like pretty obvious. I was like, okay, well, we're just kind of like leaning into it now. Um, that's not to say like we might not branch into other styles in the future, because like we're generally like, the reason why I love Lolita is mostly because of its root aesthetics, like in historical fashion. So that's really where my love for Lolita really comes from, between like, you know, music and historical fashion. That's kind of like those two things combined is like how I like visualize this fashion in my mind. Like, for some people it's like, oh, it's like this fashion first, but I'm like, I was drawn to Lolita because I'm like, oh, they take elements from like historical stuff that I have loved for so many years, and it's more wearable. That's what I saw, and I was like, that I like that. I like that about this. So like I feel like our aesthetic for our brand kind of leans more towards like looking at the original historical aesthetics and like modernizing that, which is very much like a Lolita silhouette, but there is options to go beyond that, and we haven't really explored that fully, but it's definitely something that we are very interested in doing, I would say.
Ooh, so maybe some OG in the future.
Oh my goodness. I actually had that thought, but here's the secret. I'm not really good at tailoring. And
Oh,
tailoring and dressmaking have very not very different roots, but I know I took a tailoring course in one of my semesters at FIT. I wasn't very good at it. It's like a lot more painstaking, a lot more like fit is like everything. And I feel like with dressmaking, especially when you put shirring and everything, there's a lot of things you can get away with that in tailoring you just can't, because one stitch is crooked. I mean, even if dressmaking one stitch is crooked, you'll notice. And I mean, I notice because I'm like super critical of everything that I do. But when it comes to tailoring, I'm like, oh my god, like this is gonna kill me. Like I'm just gonna be super like I can see myself in the, because like I'm the main pattern maker for the brand, so I make all the patterns, I do all the stuff. um Jen sews, but I'm like we both sew, but I make all the patterns.
oh,
So tailoring patterns, I'm like I'm gonna have to make mock-ups. I don't really like making mock-ups. That's bad. You should make mock-ups. I need to do it more often, but I'm just lazy sometimes, and I'm like, well, I know this worked last time, so we're just gonna do what works. But I'm trying to get better at that, because if I do want to get into more like advanced techniques, I'm going to have to like take the time to perfect my craft, and that takes time. I mean, I've been doing fashion work since I was 13, because starting in high school, like we learned sewing, pattern making and all that stuff from I was really young. So I've been doing it a long time. So that's another thing. A lot of people say like, oh my god, like you, how are you able to like make all these like beautiful things? I'm like, years and years and years of work and repetition and practice and 1001 mistakes that you just want to cry on your sewing machine. You're like, what have I done? I've ruined my whole life. And then you're just like, okay, I know I'll never do that, whatever that is again. So it's hard work, but it's fun.
wow, that's amazing. And of course, again for the audience, it is a black-owned Lolita brand. So I will have the name of the brand and where you can find them in the description, so you can check out Aria's and Jennifer's brand. So that was great, Aria. I mean, I'm so glad that we have um Black Lolita brands. So just to continue supporting. So going back to social media and J Fashion, um, a lot of times it seemed like Lolitas recommend 4chan, CGL, lolcow, to newer Lolitas, and usage in Lolita, the continued usage in Lolita. What is your opinion of those recommendations to newer Lolitas?
My opinion is that stop. Like, no, please. Like, oh, because as a oldie in the fashion, like my introduction to it was Live Journal, like EGL community on Live Journal. And yes, these other communities have existed since then as well, but in my mind, they've always existed as places of like, don't venture there, it's dangerous. Like, and I definitely felt like that, because like being like a black person, I was like, there's racist stuff over there. Like, I just knew, like, I just like know, like, it's like I'm in danger if I venture into that space. Like, I don't know. I've always had like this very visceral reaction. Like sometimes I hear, like I just hear CGL, I hear 4chan and those things. It doesn't have a positive connotation in my mind, because I just think of it as like anything that's like anonymous, it's just gonna breed toxicity and hatred. And especially like thinking now about like the current state of affairs and the levels of like misinformation that gets pushed around because there's no accountability. And that's the problem. Like, even because people act out of pocket even when their name is attached. So imagine how people are going to be if they can hide behind a layer of anonymity. I can never say that word. Like, yes, that word. um so it's just scary. Like, I just think it's scary. Like, it literally, like, and I know it sounds dramatic, but it's always like kind of terrified me to think about like going there. Like, even when I would see, like, sometimes I would see like screenshots from like things from there. I see like that format and I'm like, no, 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 don't look at that. Like, my body is just like rejects it. I'm like, no, like, that's danger. That's danger. Though the little green with
Yeah.
little letters, I'm like, no, 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 that's scary. Don't read that. Don't look at that. It's probably racist. It's probably terrible. Even if it's not. Sometimes I know that there are genuine people in these communities who, are there and they want to help people and they want to make it like a legit thing. But it's just like that platform is not made for, because it lacks accountability, lacks moderation in some capacity. I mean, they I don't know. I feel like there probably is some sort of moderation, but what? Like, it's like this entity that you don't even know if are they even real. Like, it just feels like everybody's a bot or everybody's like some incarnation of like terrible. Like, they take their most terrible self, live there, and then on the outside of there, they're another person. And that, I don't know, that's something about that just always been like very disturbing to me. um so I just advise people not to go to venture into those dangerous places for advice. There is a lot other places you can go. I feel like just like Instagram is better, even though Instagram has its issues too. But like, I don't know. And I know I feel like I come again from like a place of privilege, like being in the fashion for such a long time, being there from, I don't want to say the very beginning, but like the burgeoning like Western community, like taking shape. Like, I was there at like, maybe not day one, but like maybe day like 20, like if it was like that range, like whatever that even means arbitrarily. But like, I got into it like if Western Lolita was like becoming a thing, like maybe in like 2004, like really like taking shape, and existed in some capacity before that in the 90s in Japan. Like, I'm sure there was people who was wearing Lolita in the 90s from the Western community. I'm sure they exist. But when it really started taking shape, like I saw like these beautiful communities on LiveJournal like flourish. And LiveJournal had its issues too. There were a non sort of like submission stuff. There's old like, what is it? Oh, I forgot what it's called.
I think
Like,
behind the bows.
yeah, and
Yeah.
like the secrets and that type
Yeah.
of stuff. And that was a little negative. Sometimes it was funny, but most time it was just negative. And I'm like it's fine to be like making fun of something general, but when you're like making personal attacks and like dragging people through the mud for no real reason besides the fact that they don't like how they wore something, I'm like, there are much more important things in this world. I just felt like I could never give my energy to it because it just didn't make sense to me. Um, and not to say I'm like some holier than thou type of like person. I'm not perfect, but it's just, I just always just stayed away from that like negativity as much as I could because I just did not feel safe, and I don't think anybody should feel safe. So like anonymous forums can turn on people in a snap, like, because no one really cares. They don't have to care because they're anonymous.
Yeah, and I feel like people who are still recommending that in 2021 still, that's just a huge red flag
Red flag.
of
It's
the
almost like you're, yeah, it's almost like you're like taking somebody and throwing them in the wolves den, like, here, go die. Like it's very terrible. I don't know, it's very dramatic the way I'm describing it, but that's how I feel because it's just always freaked me out.
I
So
mean, in a way, like, yeah, you might die because they'll just probably kill your interest of Lolita if you see like yourself being like, all these like could be racist and all the bad comments, like if you just see a picture of yourself, even though if it is blanked out, but if you know what you look like, you know what you look like and seeing it there.
Exactly. I don't like that. Like that's like the most terrifying thing. Like I used to even tell people like if you see me come up on something, just don't tell me because I
Right.
don't know. I'd rather not know because it's just gonna be unnecessary negative energy that's coming into my space and I don't need that. Just like I'm just gonna avoid it. No part of it. You could do that over there if you want. I advise you not to, but I'm still not gonna tell you what to do with your life. So yeah.
Yeah, like I would much rather be in the dark about if I ever get posted on there for the rest of my life than having like a day of like being really sad about what people have to say about me.
Yeah, it's just we don't need that energy. It's like there's too much crap in the world to be sad about people being mean on the internet. It's just like really.
Honestly. So then how do you feel about the current state of social media and Lolita J fashion in general? Since we had some fiascos happened probably in the past this month, last month. How do you feel is the current state of social media?
Whew, man. Um, little volatile, a little uncomfortable. I know for me personally, I've been struggling a lot with like feeling motivated to post on social media in general, just like feeling motivated to like create content as a whole because I feel like there's a lot of like pressure to beat algorithms and do like things in a certain way, and because of my personality I don't like being told what to do. So when it's like you have to do this way and there's all these like tricks like, oh, you got to post like reels every day, and I'm like, I could barely get that damn thing to work. Like I tried to make one, it just broke. Like it just didn't work on my phone. I'm just like, well, now I can't use this. Like I tried your little ploy, Instagram, but you're banning, you're not letting me use it. Like it just didn't work. So I was like, and I don't have a lot of patience for technology, especially when it doesn't work, especially as somebody who's I don't know, I don't think I mentioned this before, but like I'm changing careers to UX design from fashion design, which used to be my full-time job. Now it's only my side hustle. So when things in technology, I can see them not working properly, and I'm like, I don't have the power to fix it because like that's my focus. Like, making technology more usable for people and enjoyable for people, and to see like a complete violation of that from Facebook, from Instagram, like just not listening to their users and not listen. And this is kind of like something different, but it ties into it for me because when it's something that like it's my soon to be profession, it's frustrating to be like, oh, you're literally making a platform that doesn't care about the people using it, like period. Like you're not listening to people's complaints, you're only here to like sell things to people. Everything is very much like transactional, and that takes a lot of toll on the people, especially in alternative fashion communities, because like we're just like feeding into like this hole of nothing and not getting a lot in return. Like you can post your outfits and you're like trying to reach out to community, because for me, I my thing is like, connecting, because that was what brought me to social media in the first place. I wanted to remain connected with people when I couldn't be with them in physical space, and just have like this online world to like shape the way I wanted, because I'm from the MySpace generation, and I'm like, I'm used to like this like customization and like this ability to make your internet world like what you wanted, like what we wanted. And so like I feel like a lot of it now is that's all taken. Like we're just subjected to whatever big tech conglomerate is like, this is what I want you to see because of your cookies and your this and your that. And that's like a whole other thing, but it's frustrating, and it doesn't help to add the other layer of just like um volatility in the community, and people saying things that they really shouldn't be saying, and not listening to Black people and not listening to people of color when they have valid complaints about their experiences and things that they've gone through. And then we're just told to, like, literally being gaslit and like, oh no, that doesn't happen, that's not real, like you're lying, and like everything is fine. And it's like it's really not. And so on top of battling algorithms and being like pessimistic about content creation and feeling exhausted from the back and forth, when all I really want to do is post cute pictures and talk to my friends. Like I actually spend most of my time on Instagram mostly in DMs now, because like I just either I'm sharing other people's content or DMing. I'm barely even posting my own content because it's a little tiring for me personally. And also, as somebody who is trying to break into a new career and also has a side business, I just don't have a lot of time to fight with nonsense on social media. So I'm like, well, you know what? I have an app timer. Once that timer runs out, I'm out. Like that's it. Like I just have to set boundaries and limitations. And when I see things are getting a little bit out of hand, like I'll leave my angry comment over here, and then I'm like, all right, I said what I said, I'm leaving now. Like that's kind of how I have to handle it, because otherwise I'm not gonna spend like hours like arguing with people in comments. I can't. I have no energy for that. When I see like threads of like bullshit, I'm like, I'm just gonna skip. Like, so maybe I'll read a little bit of it, and I'm like, all right, this is draining my soul now. I gotta go. Like, I think it's just like knowing your limits and knowing when to like just stop feeding into whatever, be it like benevolent algorithms or shady like people trying to start drama. Just gotta take yourself out.
Right. No, yeah, I agree. So then, um, as a Black person that is on social media, in Facebook specifically, I'm not sure if you're a part of these groups. I would say there's like two major like Black oriented J fashion groups. So we have Black Jfasionista Society and Black Lolita Community. How important are these groups for Black people in J fashion?
I think they're super important. Unfortunately for me, I kind of took myself out of the Facebook world because it just was having a lot of negative effects on my mental health. But um, I try to jump in every now and then for specifically for groups, especially like Black Lolita Community, because there's just so much like uplifting there. And I remember when I was a baby Lolita, and there was a live journal community called La Lolitas. Like, I don't know why it was called La Lolitas, but it was specifically for Black Lolitas. And a lot of the content was geared towards that like community for Black Lolitas. And there wasn't a lot of people, like there wasn't many of us. I doubt a lot of people even remember that existed. And it's funny because I actually discovered La Lolitas before EGL, which is funny. And I'm like, and I ended up getting linked to EGL community from La Lolitas, which was the Black Lolita community on LiveJournal. And then like La Lolita's kind of like, it wasn't very, for a while it wasn't really very active, and I kind of just like moved more into like the whole greater community. But now I feel like I've went into like the bigger communities that are just like general, and now I'm like trying to kind of go back in. So like the smaller communities I think are super important, because sometimes you just have to like find your people, and you need that safe space to feel like, you know, you can openly talk about things and not get gaslit in the comments because people don't see your point of view. Um and I feel like it happens a lot to Black Lolitas, particularly because we're just kind of told like, like sit down and like shut up a lot of times. Like, why are you complaining? Like you're fine, like everything is fine, or whatever the case may be. And it's just like, no, like we do need these spaces to um kind of get away from like that greater greater community noise sometimes. And it's just certain things that we experience as Black Lolitas that are just not going to be the same as other Lolitas, of other backgrounds, and definitely very, very, not maybe not opposite, but very different from like white Lolitas, particularly because a lot of times white Lolitas, um, don't necessarily have to deal with like those layers and layers of marginalization. And it's not to say that there are white Lolitas who don't have marginalized like things that marginalize them. Of course there are, but I feel like everybody just needs like that space to kind of like get away from the larger community and just exist without like fear and just being worried about people like taking things that they say the wrong way and not understanding the nuances of it, and it's a lot. So super important, I think.
So Aria, that was such a great conversation. I feel like I learned so much. Like I mean, I personally have only been wearing Lolita since like 2015. And I was like introduced to J fashion like probably like in the 2010s, but I didn't really actively wear it until like 2015. So I've learned so much from you, and I like that this series is like also for me to learn too, and I hope people also listen to what you're saying because I just feel like you just delivered so much gold. So for any like new Lolitas or just or anyone in general in J fashion, do you have any recommendations or any words of encouragement for them?
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to recommendations, like I as an indie designer, I'm just like a big proponent of just like buying within the community. As much as I love Japanese brands and it's wonderful, and there's like we have a great secondhand market for that. Like if you can get things secondhand, do it. And if you can support your indie brands, even with like small purchases, please do it. There's like so many of us like trying to, we're all making like really, really amazing things. There's a lot of other like black owned brands. Like I know Elegy is one of them, and Dolby, and there are more. There's definitely more. And from J Fashion to like Lolita Fashion, and like just that support, and even like just for other brands, because I feel like a lot of us all as indie brands, regardless of like our background, like is a very like close knit, like we all kind of like help each other. Oh, how could I forget like Moss Badger, especially. I'm actually wearing Moss Badger necklace right now, so I'm just like plug for Moss Badger. Um, so like there's just like so many of us doing like really really like great work, either like black people or like people of color in general, because like there's like that layer, because I feel like I have so many different allies and so many different backgrounds, and um creators of so many different backgrounds, and I'm just like support everyone as much as you can. Like for me, I'm like, oh, there are times like for a lot of us, it's we don't really have the money to like buy what we want. Like a lot of things like I've accumulated over. Oh, this is definitely a tip I definitely want to say. For new Lolitas especially, as somebody who has come from a low income background and had to be very creative about what I have, and I feel like sometimes people who are new like look at Lolitas who've been around for years. Like I've almost like I'm nearing a decade and a half at this point. Um, they see what you have and they're like, oh wow, like how are you like rich? Do you have like how do you have money to afford like all this stuff? I'm like, this is years of accumulation. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, you don't just wake up tomorrow and have a full closet of like perfect items. And then your style changes so much over the years. So, something you might like when you're first starting out, a year later, you'd be like, why did I buy this? Like, I don't even like this anymore. So, it takes time, like curation over time. Don't not pay your rent just to buy Lolita stuff or J fashion stuff. Don't do that, because it's just you're not gonna be happy if you can't like sustain yourself. Like even if you have a small capsule collection of like a few key pieces that you know all work together and all go together, like if it's very easy if you're gothic like me, because it's just like layers of black stuff and it's pretty easy to kind of like get away with that. It's harder if you're sweet. It's definitely harder if you're sweet. But just consolidate and not put too much pressure on yourself to like be perfect out the gate and have all the stuff, because it takes years and years. And if you're the type of person who wants to like DIY and like make your own, and I'm so encouraged that, because um it's definitely where I got my start. And I didn't become like amazing at sewing overnight. Like they say it takes what 10,000 hours to be a master at something. Yeah, I've exceeded 10,000 hours a long time ago now. So that speaks to my abilities in that sense. So, don't compare, like try not to compare yourself to people who may be more established in the fashion already. Don't get too hung up on like Instagram perfection, because a lot of it is not real. Filters and like all those things, like making people different, and like it warps your sense of reality. Like just when you need a break from that stuff, like the superficial stuff, like let's remember like why you wear J fashion. Like is not, it shouldn't constantly be in service to other people, because I think it's we get to this point where we're like, am I dressing up for me anymore, or am I dressing up to look good for other people? And it's okay if you want to dress up to look good for other people, but make it be about you first and your needs first, because if it's not, you're not going to be happy. You're going to be like, it's going to be like you're filling a void of emptiness, and it'll never be filled by just having stuff. It's not. You have to be good like with yourself, like before like going too deep into this.
Right, I agree. Thank you so much for those words. For I hope newer Lolitas and I feel like even just seasoned Lolitas could take that advice to heart as well. So thank you so much, Aria, for being here on the sixth episode of Frill Talk. I hope you had a lovely time here.
I did. Thanks for having me.
And I hope everyone at home, again, just continue listening to Black and people of color voices. We'll have plenty of more guests on here, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye, everyone.